Staubes is an attorney, a father, a husband, a former Charleston County School Board member, and the past chairman of the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce. Now he's a Republican candidate for the newly created House District 80 in Mount Pleasant. I talked one-on-one with him about his campaign for the South Carolina House of Representatives for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Yes, Staubes, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You know, you are an attorney, you're a husband, you're a former Charleston County School Board member, and the past chairman of the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce. Now you're a Republican candidate for South Carolina House District 80, which covers the certain parts of Mount Pleasant. You've been involved with politics and government and community service for many years. Why this? Why now?
All right. So why now? Because the district was just recently drawn. So every 10 years they have the census. And when they take the census and they say, all right, we need to reapportion based on what the population is. Now, Mount Pleasant is one of these areas that's really grown a lot. Now, I think there are a lot of places in South Carolina, and I think people are moving from up north over here. People move from California to Texas and here. But when you look at the population numbers, we used to joke that people came from Ohio, but what we saw is people are coming from New Jersey and New York to the South Carolina area. So that's so we got a lot of growth. We now have 95,000 residents over in the Mount Pleasant area. When my family and I moved over there, it was must have been 1997, I believe. I guess right, 1997. Because I remember we scratched the 1997 in the concrete when we built our first house on the little driveway, like people do. And we lived in the Bell Hall area, which is right off of 526. And actually, that's one side of this new House District 80. And then it Long Point Road. So we lived there until 2004. We had our first kid in that little house. It was a 1,300 square footer in Bell Hall, and then we moved to another house in Bell Hall when we added kid number 2. And then when kid number 3 was on the way, we needed a little bit bigger space. So we ended up moving to Dunes West, which just happens to be the other side of the new House District 80. So it seems like a tailor-made new district for me. I represented Mount Pleasant residents on the Charleston County School Board back from 2014 to 2018. Obviously, I started the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, so that's kind of a feather in my hat because I'm really proud of that. I think we did a lot of good things for the community with that, and it really has grown and it's very active. And that's a fairly good example of a volunteer group that when you let people know you're doing it for the right reasons, they jump in and they've taken it, and it is wonderful, and it's doing a lot of good things right now, which I'm sure we'll end up talking about a little bit today. And then even in the middle of that district, the Long Point community. So when you look at things that are going on, you got to look at your past, look to your future. And Long Point subdivision, that's my family used to own that land. So what is now Palmetto State Park is
right.
My family, got to the state, so there could be a nice park for our community. So I've got deep roots in this area.
How do you look at the past, present, and the future of this district?
How do I look at it?
Yes, sir. Not as a resident, but as a politician.
Yes. So I always look at what can be in addition to what is. Obviously, when I moved over to Mount Pleasant, I think we had it couldn't have been too much more than 10,000 residents. So when my family moved over, like when my wife and I moved over, started our family, 95,000. It is overbuilt. We have roads that haven't kept up. We've got infrastructure. We've got schools that are. We worked to build that Lucy Beckham School and I remember, and I was actually involved behind the scenes on that as an attorney for the Charleston County School District for the early 2000s on up until I resigned that position so I could run for the school board, because you can't work for the company that you're on. I mean, so I gave up that. And that was a nice job to have, but I gave that up to run for that part. But I helped cobble together the different parcels so that we could have the Lucy Beckham School for our residents. So then, we got 49.5 acres, I believe, total, and it was the old Wando premises right there on the corner of Mathis Ferry and Whipple. And then we got the plans, and they started coming together. And I remember Kate Darby and I, who were the two new representatives from Mount Pleasant, looked at it, and they had, I think it was like 1,200 seats, and that was just ridiculous. And now we ended up selling the old Lang facility, took that money, and worked with our contemporaries across because you have 9 members of the Charleston County School Board. You have to work with folks. And so we did that, and we said, well, that money's coming from the old Lang. I think it was like 13 or 14 million. And so we rolled that money into expanding the Lucy Beckham School so that it would at least have 300 more seats, which still isn't enough, but that's what we got for what we could do. And as I'm sure you are aware, the Lucy Beckham School is full. And we got one more year that needs to transition in, but it's full. And of course, Wanda was already more than full.
Yes, and I walk by there all the time when I'm heading over to Long Point Road.
Yep.
Walking, that is. But let me ask you this. Okay, you talk about infrastructure earlier in this particular interview. What current private and public partnerships would you have for infrastructure for your district?
So what current private partnerships or public? Okay.
Yeah, public-private partnerships would you have for infrastructure?
Well, for infrastructure, that is an interesting question because, infrastructure, you think about things like schools and roads. There's not that many developer parcels left in what's greater Mount Pleasant, but there are a few. Which the desire is, and now this is more probably on your council, like your town council level than your state level, but that doesn't matter. So the county council and the town council need to work with these developers and a lot of this stuff. And I think developers, the ones who are successful, they know this. But you work with your local community to say, listen, we want to develop X number of acres. We would like to donate some land for a school because a nice school in a neighborhood makes it more desirable for people to buy the lots, obviously. And the same with, they're going to put their own roads in at their own expense, their water, their sewage that they're going to hook up, which is a big issue. But they also need to do ingress, egress to the parcel where it's not going to interfere with traffic. You need to have wider lanes out there. So, I mean, we already know it's a mess. I've been out waving. Okay. So I've been knocking doors for over 3 months across the whole district. So that's been great. I mean, I've met a lot of great people doing that. And then at some point I even caught COVID. So I was like, okay, can't knock on doors. So I've got out, and for the last month, I've been standing on the road. I'm sure a lot of people see me. I've got my big giant sign waving, and then we've got a team that's doing the same thing. So we were out there today. We had 3 of us out waving out in front of Boone Hall. But of course, COVID came and went, and it really wasn't as bad as what you hear about. So that was good. But it came and went, and then so now back to knocking on the doors and meeting people. But you just know. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is the traffic is absurd, and we knew that because I sit in the traffic. You see it because you walk down the roads and you see the traffic. It is obnoxious. I was trying to do rush hour waving, and I would go, all right, there's the corner of 41, 41 and 17, just nonstop cars. Obviously, I was doing out in front of Rivertown and where Dunes West come together, and cars coming out there during rush hour, doing the same thing down near Bell Hall, but then corner of Whipple and Long Point. So you try to see as many people as you can. But there were some parts where the traffic just didn't stop. It didn't matter that rush hour was slowing down or not. We have that many cars, with that many pedestrians, that many people living out there, and that's a problem. These things need to be addressed, and there's not a quick solution to any of this. That's a problem.
Well, I know, infrastructure is a little tight around there right now. Where would you obviously widen those lanes in your district?
Right. So obviously, Highway 41 is going to be widened, and that one's one that's been in the works for a long time, and that's got some issues going right now. And what I would suggest is they find a way that minimizes the impact on anyone that's going to be impacted. That's in whatever ways are possible, because there's families that live on 41, obviously, and then they're talking about going through some other areas. They whatever they do, and this is a county level decision. Obviously, a state house person can probably say, yeah, I like this or I like that, but the county people are in charge of that. I'm not even sure the town has as much say, but it's basically the county council level. But the right thing to do is to try to minimize as much impact as possible, and to try to think through how it's going to impact people. Like if you're going to take some property from people, you need to make sure there's a fair way to compensate them, number one, and number two. And I know that some people are impacted out of heirs property. You need to have maybe some money set aside so that you got the lawyers that are going to help those families make sure the money goes to the right people, so it doesn't just get lost. And that's the unfortunate thing about not thinking through the whole process up front, and then they really need to do that.
Now let me ask you this. I want to get back to that in just a second. I'm running out of time, but what's the most important thing that has actually changed? And I know it's a newly created district, but what has been the most important thing that has actually changed in that part of Mount Pleasant over the past 4 years?
It's the growth. Mount Pleasant is residential growth on steroids. It's obviously I'm involved with the Chamber of Commerce. I've been involved with the town in various task force economic committees and whatnot, and obviously I have the ear of the people in the town level for any of those developments, and I work well with not only the Mount Pleasant Chamber, obviously, but the Charleston Metro Chamber and the Regional Development Alliance, any of the commerce groups and what's going on. And what we've seen, and this is true, I'm a business lawyer by trade, and we all know that not all businesses make it. So it's going to be true. Someone will open up a restaurant or a store that services the folks who live in the north area of Mount Pleasant, and a lot of these unfortunately haven't made it. Now, people will keep trying, and what we need to do is just make sure to encourage people to utilize the services of the stores and businesses that open up, so that we really can have it's not going to be a self-contained environment of where people can just go shop and live, but as much as we can possibly do. So that's important, and that has changed over time.
Now, well, how many businesses have been actually lost in that area?
Mine would all be anecdotal from seeing it, so I don't have the numbers, obviously, but I mean, we all know of restaurants that have popped up that's like, okay, well, that is now going to become this, because it used to be this. There's one I'm thinking of that's on Highway 17 that we've known as a restaurant. I think it was Rusty Rudder. It's been a couple other things, and now it's a new restaurant, and hopefully the people will go there and enjoy the food and support that restaurant. And then there's some over in the public shopping center that I think there's one's called Mex One now. It's been 4 or 5 different places, but it's just those. But I'm glad people keep trying, and the food is good at that restaurant, so I do encourage it. And then of course we've got the new Carolina Park, which is a little bit outside of the district, but I would encourage people to go to those stores as well, those businesses, because we need to encourage that type of growth in the area, because it can't all be residential. It needs to also have something for the residents.
Okay, okay. Where in the district do you identify and also develop those unique characteristics when it comes to residential, commercial, and mixed use?
Mixed use, yeah. So that is an interesting one. So we actually looked at doing that over in the Carolina Park area, and I think there is talk of trying to do that. There are some successful mixed use. Now, some people see that as a bad idea because they worry about the traffic. So all that, of course, needs to be planned out in advance. No one wants to see what's called high density residential, but if you can use mixed use where you do have some residents there, but then you also have during working hours some use of a business, that is something that should be looked at, and I think developers see a benefit for doing that thing. And it's usually where you see that success, because as I grew up in downtown Charleston as a kid, and every single corner we had a little store. It was, the family would live upstairs, and there'd be a store downstairs, and that was kind of cool because you go as a kid, you get on your bike, you walk down to the corner, and you grab some candy and a soda or whatever, and then you run it to your friends. And of course, I imagine the kids more now hang out and do their video games, but it's good to have that type of ability to have a community and people go out. So you're not just going home each day and then, wait till the next day so you get in your car to go somewhere.
Well,
Yeah.
what's more important for your district, Chris? Is it building new homes and commercial space, or rehabbing, expanding, and better utilizing the existing homes?
Right. So now the existing homes, I have not seen that kind of turnover yet. Now you'll see that type of thing on the islands. Obviously, the islands will. Those prices are ridiculous. I'm sure you've interviewed people who are representing or want to represent the islands. And they probably talked about that prices, and we've all seen this just from growing up in the local area, where you'll get a community where it's been around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and then the new people come in and bulldoze the houses and put new ones up. I don't think we're there yet, and I'm trying to think of the makeup of 80. And I can't think of any neighborhoods that are at that point where anyone would try to change the dynamics of it right now. I really cannot. Obviously, you've got the Phillips community and the Snowden community, but from the people I've talked to there, they have no interest in any changes. In fact, I had one gentleman from the Phillips community who basically said, "We like to be in the county because we can put our mobile homes up, and we don't want any changes. We don't want anybody telling us what to do." It's like, okay, well, that's an interesting dynamic. So but I can't think of any place right now where someone's going to come and bulldoze a bunch of houses and put up a mixed use. There are fortunate or unfortunate situations where you got shopping centers across Mount Pleasant. I'm trying to think of which ones it might be up in 80. But it doesn't matter whether they're 80 or not. It's Mount Pleasant, but you'll see a grocery store that'll shut down, and then it'll get repurposed. There is one. This may be an 80 now that I think about it. I read about it the other day. It was Greenwise grocery store that across from, you've probably seen that, it was across from Town Center.
Right.
And they're to like an outdoor outfitters type store. That's kind of cool. Can't wait to go check it out. But you'll see different setups like that come in where they repurpose something.
Now, what other dynamics do you see going to happen next in your district?
That's a good question. So, I'm gonna look long term here because that's really what I'm kind of excited about. You get elected for these positions and you deal with the immediate needs, and there are immediate needs. You're budgeting and the important issues, the social issues, of course, that need to be addressed. Then there's just the things that pop up that are just important to the community at large that need to be addressed. But the long term, which I think is going to be exciting, is in 20 years from now, we've got all this traffic. 20 years from now, those cars are not most likely going to be gasoline-powered cars. I'm not against gasoline, but I think we all see it coming. 20 years from now, they're probably going to have self-driving cars. There's going to be a whole new dynamic of transportation, which is going to mean that, all right, we need to have power stations. We need to have ways for people to, are these cars going to be ones that you own? Or are they going to be ones that are going to be taxis? I'm taking 20 years out now. I'm not talking about something that's going to happen. Right, we won't be. We'll be old by then. But so that's one issue, and and of course you need to have the infrastructure that goes in place for that, for self-driving cars. Additionally, I think we saw during COVID how people are moving towards the work-at-home structure. That might actually benefit Mount Pleasant. We from my different hats that I wear on chambers of commerce and economic development committees and task force, we're like, how do we get more manufacturing? How do we get more retail? How do we get in? That's all nice and fine and well, but we're going to have a different economy in the next 20 years. We're going to have people working from home. So your municipalities and your states need to think of ways, if you're going to have a business license, maybe we need to allow for ways for people to work from home and have businesses deal with it that way.
What strategies would you implement that would promote economic vitality and the financial stability of the district while maintaining its residential character and preserving its natural beauty?
Wonderful question. Absolutely. Because Mount Pleasant is not going to change from people have tried. It's not going to move from they talk about not wanting to be a bedroom community, but it is. But it's the biggest bedroom community in South Carolina. But to move that direction, it really is going to take some forethought. And I am sure there are people already thinking about this. If they're not, they should be ashamed of themselves because they haven't thought about this. But they need to start thinking through the future of what our communities are going to be. And Mount Pleasant being, I think we're the fourth largest city in the state of South Carolina. And if we're not the fourth, then we're probably the third. But we're pretty close there. We are right there, and we need to be thinking about those types of things statewide as well. Because right now, fortunately, our state, unlike some of the other states, have done well. We've got a surplus in our budget. We've got a $30 trillion budget, and we're doing well with that. But things change over time, and you can't get stuck, like the old story about the company that keeps selling the buggy whips or whatever it may be. That they don't need that anymore because you start doing cars. So we need to be thinking that way so that we are on the forefront. And I think a lot of the southern states where people are moving have an opportunity to do that type of thing, especially when you do have some big industry that's moved. We may not have the big industry that moves to Mount Pleasant. There may be some that are cool that set up with some professional services and whatnot, but or with some other services. But we got Boeing, we've got obviously BMW in the upstate, we've got Mercedes, we've got Volvo, we've got these are companies, and a lot of those folks live here in Mount Pleasant. So it's a good way to, we need to think of ways that those people can do their jobs well, have a good experience for them and their families, good education that draws people to our community, good standard of living. And those are issues that we need to address, need to be thinking through. And then the state, of course, needs to modernize and be there ready to accept these people.
How do you modernize public transportation in House District 80?
That's a good one. So the way I know that what CARTA has tried. So in CARTA, I'll just give that example. So CARTA is the one that's we all know about. They've tried. I give them a pat on the back for trying. What they do is they'll set up little hubs that people can drive their cars to. Let's say out where we are in North Mount Pleasant, if someone wants to, if they work at the hospitals or at the College of Charleston and MUSC, and they need to get downtown, they can go drive there, and then there's a bus that will take them downtown and then drop them off. Now, the problem is the hours are weird. My wife taught business law at College of Charleston, and she tried to do that, and she would go, and it was nice. You get there, if you get there before, I think it was and I could be wrong about the time. Say 10 o'clock, you get on the bus, go downtown, and then there was now you have to wait till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon to come back. So if you just had 1 or 2 classes, you might not be able to do this because it's not going to be convenient to you. Those types of things need to be looked into, ways to expand that or encourage that type of thing, because we do have too many cars on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And how many cars actually travel do your district every day?
No, that's a great question. I wish I knew, but I can just tell you anecdotally, seeing them a whole lot. If we've got 95,000 residents, I mean, obviously there's some kids in there that are not driving, but you look at those numbers of who works and lives in Mount Pleasant.
Right.
It's half the people are leaving to go work someplace. Not of 95,000, but half the working age people. And then half the jobs that are being done in Mount Pleasant are people coming from other places. All you have to do is go look at 526 either in the morning or I'm a member of a number of organizations that have meetings, like my Boy Scouts. So I'm the president of the Coastal Carolina Council of Boy Scouts of America. That's all the scouts from I-95 to the coast in 9 different South Carolina counties. But we have our meetings up by Charleston Southern, and we do it at 9 o'clock in the morning. You got to put more than an hour in place just to get through there, and you might hit traffic, and I may end up doing half my meeting off of a cell phone because I'm not there because I can't get it. Now we do offer Zoom to our board members because that's the right thing to do. The same thing in the evening. I have meetings. We used to meet over at Park Circle, but of course they're redoing the building there. But now we do some meetings over in Goose Creek. If I don't leave at the right time, 526 is a parking lot, and it's just a nightmare. You're just not getting out of town. And it's because people have come to Mount Pleasant to work in those jobs, and now they have to head back over to either North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, West Ashley, wherever it may be. And I don't know if that's a long way to answer your question. There are a lot of cars. Yes.
Where exactly in House District 80 can they be attainable housing and workforce housing?
Right. Okay. So attainable housing and workforce housing. The best way that has been tried so many different ways, and I've actually, as a lawyer, worked with the city of Charleston through some of their affordable housing, which may be a little different from workforce or attainable. But and then Mount Pleasant, of course, has been working through that process as well. What seems to have some small successes is when you do a cooperative agreement, and this may actually go back to what you were asking earlier about the public-private partnerships. If the municipality or the state or whoever it may be decides to that they want to encourage that type of thing, if they can give some types of incentives, just working well with or streamlining processes, you will find developers out there who would like to. All right, I'm going to put a certain amount of my inventory for attainable housing, and it's a cooperative arrangement. I think we all know that you don't want to put everybody all in one place. You don't stigmatize people. You want your folks who make, and Mount Pleasant's gotten expensive. Everywhere's gotten expensive. You know that it's way too much. I mean, I feel bad for the younger generation trying to get out and work, and I've looked at the Mount Pleasant price. Knocking on the doors has been incredible because I see these neighborhoods. I'm like, all right, this is my district, and I look at it and I'll text my wife and say, this is a beautiful neighborhood. And then I'll go on realtor.com. Now, of course, there's nothing available, but it'll say contingent. And then you'll see that they're $2 million or more for a house that it's like, wow, that's incredible. So attainable housing in Mount Pleasant is probably your $300,000 house, but that's where we are in this reality. And it's kind of scary. Yeah.
What's the median home price in your district?
That's a really good question. Same question. Answer before. I don't know the specifics, but just from having looked around, it's got to. I don't think you can get into a condo in Mount Pleasant for less than $350 right now. I'm thinking a 1-2 bedroom condo. You're probably looking at $300, $350, and then you've got to pay your regime fees and monthly expenses, and that's a pain. And that's probably outside of 526. Inside of 526. Even more. And then the houses, I would think an entry-level house, but it can't be any less than $500,000. So when you look at what, the average and maybe difference between average and median, but you're probably looking at $700 maybe. I'm guessing $600-700 because houses are ridiculous. The ones that my wife and I bought a house, and just in the last 2 years, it's gone up, as much as we paid for it or more. It's not understandable. Yeah.
And I know you have to run, but one last question for you, and I'll get you back on Quintin Staubes. But how many
Oh, absolutely.
homes? Oh yeah, I know you're busy, but how many homes in your district have been actually built at a fairly consistent rate?
Oh, that's a good question. It's been pretty constant. Now we're actually pushed out past my district, the Carolina Park area, which has been growing for a while. And a friend of mine, his family did that one, but it's been pretty consistent. I guess they're doing some infilling now, but a lot of these houses. So let's think, Dunes West was a lot of those houses were built in the 90s and then into the early 2000s.
Right.
And obviously they're still building, so there's still things that are going up there. Park West, same type of thing, that 90s, early 2000s. You had that little bump there where everything collapsed and then things slowed down. But then you've got neighborhoods that up and down, or I'll say down 17, going north towards the forest that have popped up that are really, really nice houses, wonderful families. But if you go the other direction, you've got Bell Hall, which may be a little bit before that. I know 526. I think that opened 1992. That's what I got in my head. I could be wrong with the exact date, but that really opened up that Long Point area and those neighborhoods, and some of those pre-existed that. And then the older area, I would say, would probably be what's called Sneed Farm, which is those are beautiful houses and lots. That might be, when you ask that question about where someone might go and remodel a house completely, that might be one of the neighborhoods where people start doing that. But
Wow.
I don't know anybody doing that, but that one has been there the longest. I think that the fellow named Ed Pendarvis started developing out there back in the early 70s, if I remember correctly. And I think those little townhouses, you'll see them if you ride into the front part of Sneed Farm off of 17 over to the left. There's a whole little subdivision of townhouses. They get the big giant concrete thing in the middle, dividing them out. And he did those way back when. But that was probably early 70s. But that's been around a while. So early 70s. I'm a lot older than you. But because I remember you told me what your mile run was after we did the bridge run, and I was like, you're like, oh yeah, I think we got this, and I'm in the, I don't know, you were 35 and under or something. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a lot. But you had a great run, so everyone, yes, you are a wonderful athlete. But that's what I mean. So he was building that stuff about when I was just a few years old. So yeah.
Now, tell me, what is the current tax base in your district?
The tax, well, obviously we've got a lot of the 4% house tax. So that's so, and this just goes back to my school days, because we got this, schools get paid for by your 6% taxes, which is your commercial, your second houses, your automobiles, business taxes. And I would say the tax base is, I'm trying to think about the budget of the town of Mount Pleasant. It's probably 150,000, maybe up to 200,000. I hadn't looked at that in a while, but it's I think most of the municipalities are that way. Whether you're talking about City of North Charleston, City of Charleston, and Mount Pleasant are all in that. Probably about 200,000 now. I mean, 200 million. I'm sorry. You got to add all those big zeros. 200 million. State of South Carolina is 30 trillion. Big budget. When I was on the Charleston County School Board, it was about $500 million plus another 100 million a year for the capital, and I think that Charleston County's budget's in that $500 million range too. And I could be off by some, but that's what I remember.
And going back to Charleston County, Chris, how should Charleston County create a dedicated funding stream for attainable housing development, do zoning, and other planning tools for your district?
Oh, I like that one. That's a good one. And I'm sure they're working on this. And we got some turnover over there. There's several new spots that are opening up, and so you'll have people coming in with, I would hope, new ideas. Not that there's anything wrong with the folks who are there. But sometimes it's good to have new vision that comes in. That's a great thing about what's going on with this new District 80. You'll have a new vision. It won't just be the same people that have been there forever. You have someone new that comes up with new ideas, and that encourages thought. So they, I would say, for attainable housing, they need to be looking at ways to do, like you said, the public-private partnerships, and maybe that is some type of tax incentive for people, because I mean it is expensive to be a developer, obviously. So the developers need to, they're always looking for ways. Plus, and I learned this from the Chamber of Commerce as much as anything, you can get as much traction when you celebrate somebody's accomplishments as you do by trying to give them something. So, and let me explain what that means. Sometimes you'll find that people want to do the right thing, but then they don't know that the other side will accept what they're doing, and that maybe they want more, maybe they're going to make me pay more, maybe they're going to. But sometimes if everyone just talks at the outset, and maybe at the county, maybe there's a county employee who's tasked with this, working with the developer, says, "Look, we'd like to encourage this," and then hopefully the developers would the same way and be like, "Listen, we'll celebrate your accomplishments if you can do this and help us, satisfy some of the goals we have." And that honestly can go a long way. Because developers don't want to be painted as, the evil, greedy capitalists. I mean, if there's a way to come in and say, look, these people are, yes, they make money doing this, but they've worked with us to make sure we have some attainable housing for our community so that we can have our firefighters, our policemen, our teachers, our nurses, whoever it may be that doesn't make $200,000 a year to be able to afford the $1 million house. So working with them. And then the same goes with the working with the infrastructure. Oh, this developer has widened these roads. They've put out X number of money or X amount of property to serve the community. So we need to acknowledge that. And I think it goes both ways. And it's discussion and dialogue is what needs to happen.
Yeah, and one last question. What 10-year plan, Chris, would you submit to the Department of Transportation to correct the backlog of maintenance and actually fix roads in your district?
Oh my God. We need to figure out a way to cut through some of the red tape. Now, the red tape is on every level, and that is a problem. Highway 41 is an example. Now, the red tape on Highway 41 is not just most recently it's become we got the communities that are there that were impacted. And that kind of changed the narrative somewhat, but that was going to be a slow process, even if that never came up. Outside of 80, there's a place called Clements Ferry that goes from Daniel Island, but basically drops you off on 526. And a lot of people are using that. A lot more people are going to use that. And it's going to be built out, and it's going to be its own town at some point. I mean, it's going to be amazing how many people are going to be out there. But that has been a funded project for a decade, and they didn't start widening that until maybe a year ago. It's been crazy. And even now it's not done. It just takes forever because we have so many regulations, and they're well-meaning regulations, but they slow down the process. And so some of this won't be something you can do on the state level, or because the federal government has a requirement, like even where we are. All right, you want to widen a road? Okay, you need to have a study done to tell us what plants might be impacted, and not once. You have to do it during the fall, the spring, the winter, the summer. Then you have to do the same thing with what animals are impacted. And then there's how it impacts the communities that are around there. And then there's, obviously, we got wetland issues. And what stinks, or what bothers me about that is, we live on the coast where we have hurricanes, we have saltwater intrusion, we have flooding. And maybe you could make an argument that at least in the mid-state you got 112-degree heat, because if you've ever been to Columbia, it's pretty much, and maybe that impacts there. But we have bridges, and so I think we have more needs down here, and that needs to be reconciled with in planning and budgeting for like a 10-year plan, so to speak. And right now, unfortunately, the low country area doesn't have people that have been up in Columbia working on our behalf for very long. We have a handful, but we used to have a lot more power. There were some people who have been in the Speaker of the House position that are no longer in the State House for various reasons. But so we don't maybe have the same type of power. So the only way to make up for that is to go to Columbia and send people to Columbia who can open those dialogues with people and explain to them, look, let me tell you why we're a little different, why we need something that it may not seem fair on its face, but once you understand that we have bridges, they cost a lot more. We have hurricanes, our roads need this. We have much more growth, and there are places in the state that have growth that are not just the low country. But once you have those discussions, and when I was on the school board, it was the same way. I represented Mount Pleasant, but I also represented everybody. And I'm trying to think, I'm sure you interviewed Larry Kobrowski, and he was on the school board before me, and he probably had the same experience. You go around and you make those relationships with the other school board representatives who represent other areas, and you learn about what's important to them, and then you also, at the same time, show what's important to your area. And that's key. If you can't communicate your ideas, then you're not going to get things done. So at some point, it's on the human level, and you have to go break bread with people. You have to get things done and let them know what's important to you and learn what's important to them, and then work with each other to get things done. So that would be what I will bring to the table in Columbia.
Now, and I just interviewed Larry for Quintin's Close-Ups this past Wednesday. Now, let me ask you this, Chris. What are when it comes to Highway 41, what are the environmental impacts around that?
Yeah, well, obviously you've got a marsh right halfway through it, so it's Highway 41 has been that way, and I'm just talking about the one stretch that goes from the Wando River to 40, I mean to 17. The environmental impacts, obviously, you've got some wildlife issues. I mean, I live in Dunes West, and we have herd of deer. I mean, they're I mean, just a ton of deer. They got turkeys out there, you got foxes, you got all kind of animals, and then whatever wildlife you're going to find in a marsh. I'm sure that there are turtles and snakes and whatnot. But those things will be studied. Bird life, and those have been studied. The scary thing, because the dollar signs that go on these highway projects are just absurd, and it's because you have to pay the consultants to do all those studies to comply with the various federal requirements that they need to be done. And there's a thing called NEPA, which is the National Environmental Impacts program. I may have not have the right words, but it's called NEPA. And then, but they have to do these things, and you have to make sure that everything's looked at carefully. And yep.
Yeah, and as a disclaimer, I did reach out to Kathy Landing, your opponent, for an interview, but she has not responded to me today, well, as of yet, I should say. But Chris Staubes, thank you for your time, and again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And you are busy. You're a busy man, and I know you're going to be successful. And anything I can do.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.